So my name is Ekram and I am by training a journalist. I went to Columbia University, the School of Journalism, and I'm the author of two books that I recently published a couple of years ago. One is a biography of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, Muhammad, son of Abraham, brother of Moses, successor of Jesus. I also wrote a book inspired by the life of the Prophet Muhammad for Muslim teenagers, and it is being taught in some of the Islamic schools. As far as my religious credentials are concerned, I lived in North Carolina for 12 years, and I studied under a scholar, and that's what caused me to take a deep dive into Islam, understand it, the central message of Islam. And I have been, for the last year or so, traveling around the country, talking to different Muslim communities about the message from the life of the Prophet. And I was asked to come and address this class, and I would be happy. So my name is Ekram, and I am by training a journalist. I went to Columbia University, the School of Journalism, and I'm the author of two books that I recently published a couple of years ago. One is a biography of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, Muhammad, son of Abraham, brother of Moses, successor of Jesus. I also wrote a book inspired by the life of the Prophet Muhammad for Muslim teenagers, and it is being taught in some of the Islamic schools. As far as my religious credentials are concerned, I lived in North Carolina for 12 years, and I studied under a scholar, and that's what caused me to take a deep dive into Islam, understand it, the central message of Islam. And I have been, for the last year or so, traveling around the country, talking to different Muslim communities about the message from the life of the Prophet. And I was asked to come and address this class, and I would be happy to answer any questions about Islam that you may have.
What's the universal Muslim greeting?
It is Assalamu alaikum, meaning peace be on you.
Can you say that to non-Muslims?
You can.
So it's seems like it's a if you know that phrase Assalamu alaikum, that'll get you in Muslims. It's like
Yes.
Kind of an understanding. And what's the response to that?
The response is wa alaikum assalam, meaning on you too.
Who founded Islam?
Who founded Islam? Okay, that's a little a question that the answer needs a little bit clarification, because there is a misperception that the Prophet Muhammad is the founder of Islam. Even some Muslims think that he is the founder of Islam. But the truth of the matter is that Islam came with the first prophet of Allah, the first prophet of the Creator, and that prophet was Adam. So Islam has been there. He was the first prophet, and the Prophet Muhammad was the last prophet. And in between, there were hundreds of prophets, including Noah, Abraham, Moses, Jesus, Jacob, Joseph, Solomon, David, many others. So the basic message of Islam that came with Adam never changed, and that message was that worship only one God. And that's why when you look at the 10 Commandments, the Torah that was given to Prophet Moses, the very first commandment says that do not worship any gods besides me, meaning that the one God. Jesus, peace be upon him, said that, "Hear, O Israel, worship one God with all your heart," and that is the greatest command. And Islam, as we know, also said, قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ, say that Allah is one. He is indivisibly one, He is uniquely one. He's not one of the two, but He's uniquely one. There is nothing, no one like Him. So that is, in essence, the beginning of Islam. But in the popular understanding, Islam began with the Prophet Muhammad, and that is really not true. Because Prophet Muhammad was upon the same religion as Jesus and Moses and the prophets before him. He did not bring a new religion called Islam. And if somebody reads the Quran, we find that Allah has said that He had named the believers even before Abraham Muslim, which is literally those who submit to the command of God. That's what Muslim means, those who submit to the command of God.
So you mentioned Jesus.
Yeah.
How is he portrayed in Islam?
He's one of the most celebrated figures in Islam. He's one of the most revered figures. Jesus has been mentioned 35 times in the Quran. And his mother Mary, or Maryam, Arabic, there is a chapter actually in the Quran that is named after Mary. You don't find a chapter after Mary in the New Testament or the Old Testament, but there is a chapter in the Quran, believe it or not, after Mary. And Mary is highly praised in the Quran. It is actually, the Prophet said that she is one of the 4 greatest women of all time. And no Muslim can ever disrespect Jesus. It will throw him out of the fold of Islam if they ever disrespected Jesus, because the respect of Jesus is enshrined in the Quran itself. So it's part of our theology, part of our beliefs.
Okay, we could probably have multiple classes on that topic. What are the 5 pillars of Islam?
So Islam, coming into Islam is very easy. For those who are not born into a Muslim family, of course. So it is to say that I bear witness, or I testify that there is no God but Allah, and I bear witness that Muhammad is Allah's messenger. And this is the first. So there are 5 pillars of Islam. So this is the first one. Then the second pillar, and probably the most important pillar in the sense that you do it every day, which is the prayer. So there are 5 daily prayers. So you have the Shahada, the testimony of faith, and then you have the prayer, then you have the fasting in the month of Ramadan. This is the entire month is ordained for Muslims who are able physically to fast, who don't have health problems, and who are of an age where they can endure the pangs of hunger. So fasting, that's the third, and the fourth is giving alms, zakat. It's called zakat, the poor due, the charity. This is the mandatory in charity, which is 2.5% of your surplus wealth. So you have a saving of a certain amount for the entire year beyond your basic needs, and you give 2.5% on that. So that's the fourth pillar. And the fifth pillar is the Hajj, the pilgrimage. You may have seen in on television, in newspapers, the cubicle-shaped house that Prophet Abraham had built. This is called the Kaaba, and this is in Saudi Arabia today in a place called Mecca. And people go once a lifetime. This is a requirement for those who can physically and financially afford it. So these are the 5 pillars.
Now, the first pillar, the declaration of faith, Shahada, is there any significance to maintaining that there is one God? Is that assumed, or is there more to it?
That is the fundamental, because the essence of worship in Islam and the essence of worship that all the prophets taught was that you believe in one God. There are no other creators. There's only one creator who created the heavens and the earth, and he created.
At the time, there were different beliefs on that. Right?
Yes, There were different beliefs. As a matter of fact, when the Prophet Muhammad appeared in the Arab society 1400 some years ago, they were polytheistic people. They worshipped in many gods. They had 360 idols placed inside the Kaaba, that cubicle-shaped building, the black building you see in the picture. And this was a house that had been built by Prophet Abraham and his son Ishmael for the worship of one God. But over time, the teachings of Prophet Abraham were corrupted, and people started to worship idols. Just like Roman Empire, in the time of Jesus, peace be upon him, Roman Empire Romans were polytheistic people. They worshipped many gods. But the same Roman people embraced Christianity. And that's how Constantine, the emperor, when he embraced Christianity, then Christianity really spread far and wide because it had now the support of a kingdom behind it. So that's the essence of the testimony of faith or declaration of faith.
Did you say that Muhammad was the first messenger?
No, Adam was the first messenger.
Okay.
Yeah.
I missed her.
So can you explain what the Quran is?
So Quran is the revealed text, meaning just like Jesus received a book, a set of laws, which in Arabic is called Injil, okay? And then the term Bible came to be associated with it much later. And as you know, the term Bible comes from biblios, the Greek for book. But if you go to the Middle East and you talk to an Arab Christian, he will call the book not Bible but Injil. Okay? So the Quran, coming back to the Quran, is one of the revelations of God. So there were revelations sent to Jesus, there were revelations sent to Moses, the Torah, the tablets of the Torah, the laws, the commandments, the 10 Commandments, and the Quran. The Quran is the entire book. The unique thing about the Quran is that this entire book is preserved today. From cover to cover, 6,000 some verses, there is absolutely no change in that revelation. And there has been no human interpolation. There is no corruption of the text. So if you pick up a copy of the Quran here in the US or any place else in the world, you will not find any difference at all. And it has been preserved in its original language of revelation, meaning the Arabic language. Unlike, for example, the Bible. So Jesus, who can tell us what language Jesus spoke? Can anybody tell us? Remind us? So Jesus spoke Aramaic. And the first time Bible was compiled, it was in Hebrew and Greek, but not in Aramaic. So imagine, revelation comes to Jesus, peace be upon him, and he spoke Aramaic, not Hebrew or Greek, but the preservation of the Bible is not in the language in which it was sent down. It's the translation of that language, right?
Where is this original copy located?
The original copy?
Mm-hmm.
So some of them are in some of the museums around the world, such as it's called Topkapi Museum in Istanbul, I think, in Turkey. And there are one old copy is believed to be in a museum in Tashkent, which is in Russia. So it is scattered. But all the copies that you see today, they are from the original copy. So there is no difference. It is exactly the same Quran. There is no change. And the beauty is that if millions of Muslims have memorized the Quran by heart. So if the Imam who is leading the prayer, he forgets something, then there is always someone in the back row behind him who can remind him and who can correct him, because the preservation of the Quran is in the collective memory of the Muslims. So everybody has memorized a portion of the Quran, and there are millions of people who have memorized the entire Quran from cover to cover, and including the way it should be recited.
You talked about Jesus as a prophet, but can you explain the particular portrayal of Jesus in Islam?
So,
separate from, say, Christianity.
yes, so in Islam, Jesus is a mighty messenger of God in a long chain of messengers and prophets who came. Okay? And we believe that he had a virgin birth. He was born, he was conceived by Mary without any human intervention. Archangel Gabriel came, and by the command of God, she became pregnant. And Jesus spoke in the cradle as a baby. And Jesus showed many miracles. All of those things are mentioned in the Quran. However, the main difference is that Islam does not believe in the crucifixion of Jesus. It says that when they tried to conspire against Jesus and try to crucify him, Allah called him up into the heavens, and he is there. But before the end of time, he will come back, the so-called second coming of Jesus, at the time when the Antichrist has appeared, and he will fight the Antichrist. And also, the Quran says that he was not son of God. The Quran says that God is above his creation. He does not beget, meaning that he does not have children, nor is he begotten, meaning that he was not himself born from a woman or anything like that. He is not like his creation. He is different from his creation. So therefore, these are some of the beliefs about Jesus. And when we study the Bible, we see that the statements about Jesus' divinity and so on and so forth are not directly from him. They are people, those who compile, like Mark, Matthew, Luke, and John. They have come up and Paul, of course, that Jesus is the Son of God. And because there are some early Christians, like the Christians of Nazarene, and Nazarene Christians, who did not believe in the divinity or the Trinity. But later on, the Roman Empire adopted this belief. And of course, this is an altogether different discussion. We're talking about what Islam thinks of Jesus, and he is a mighty messenger of God. And Prophet Muhammad had a lot of praise for him. And Jesus, in one of the passages, said, in the Quran says that Jesus, as he was leaving this world, he told his disciples that after me there will come a prophet whose name will be Ahmad. And Ahmad and Muhammad mean the same thing, the praised one. So literally these two terms mean the praised one, and they come from the same root word. So he foretold the coming of the last messenger as he was leaving the scene. And in John, one of the passages says that, "Hear, O Israel, I have many things to say unto you, but you will not be able to bear them now. Howbeit, that the Spirit of the truth come unto you, and he guide you unto all the truth." And Muslims believe that Jesus, in this particular verse in the Bible, he is alluding to the Prophet Muhammad, that he is coming and he will reside among you, and he will only say what God inspires him to say.
Most Muslims in the world are of what ethnicity?
So contrary to popular understanding that most Muslims are Arabs, actually only 20% of Muslims today are Arabs. 80% of the Muslims are from the non-Arabic background. Even though Prophet Muhammad himself was an Arab, and he came to an Arab people, but then he said, one of the verses of the Quran says that we have sent you as a messenger of mercy for all of mankind. And we see that within 50 years, Islam is spread from the Arabian Peninsula into lands where Arabic was not the mother tongue. And today, 80% of Muslims are of non-Arabic descent.
I think most of the highest percentages are Asian, which would include Pakistan, Indonesia.
Yeah, it's like South Asia. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
Bangladesh.
Do you know how many Muslims in the U.S.?
Well, there is no scientific study done because the Census Bureau of the U.S. does not ask people for their religion. So there are some unscientific studies, and the number ranges from 4 millions to 10, 12 millions. So it's hard to tell, what exactly. But I have been hearing 4 millions. I heard 20 years ago, and even now I'm hearing from some media outlets 4 million. It can't be possible because the natural growth of the population through birth and through immigration, obviously, it has to be more than that.
Okay, there's this term Sharia law that is thrown around in the media, which is still a mystery to a lot of people. Is there a meaning to Sharia law to Muslims?
Yeah, I know. Sharia law has become a very scary kind of, it's being thrown at people. Oh, Sharia is coming and it's going to kill you. Everybody chop your heads off. Well, Sharia in Arabic translates into a path. And God says that we gave a path to everyone. So Prophet Moses brought a law for the people of, who did he bring the laws to for? Children of Israel, right? So that is Sharia, that path you follow. Jesus came and he forbade some things and he made some things lawful. So the do's and don'ts of a religion are called the Sharia. And so Islam came and also gave certain laws. You have to fast in Ramadan. Okay, you have to pray 5 daily prayers. You have to marry in a certain way. You have to eat certain kinds of food, the dietary laws. All of this is collectively called a Sharia, a path. But of course, Sharia, the word Sharia has taken a political connotation today, and it has been highly politicized, and people are creating fear among non-Muslims about the Sharia, but there is nothing to be feared about the Sharia. Everybody has their laws. The Christians have their laws, how they go to the church, and how they get married, how they, make vows at the time of, marriage, and so on and so forth. So have Muslims their own distinct ways of living their lives. When they die, what are the last rites of a dead person? That's all part of the Sharia.
Okay, and then the last question, a related question, what does jihad mean?
Yes, and that's another very explosive term and has been highly abused and politicized. So jihad, I know some people whose name is Jihad, So jihad in Arabic means struggle or to strive for something. So, for example, every day Muslims are engaging in an act of jihad, meaning they are struggling against the evil thoughts and whispers of Satan, for example, or temptations of this world. And the Prophet said that this is a greater jihad. Unfortunately, some people associate jihad only with fighting. Now, there is a jihad of fighting also, which is actually called qital, killing and fighting. That is, of course, limited to a certain circumstance where two groups are coming to blows and fighting, and that's jihad of that kind. But most of the jihad in everyday Muslims' life on a daily basis is struggling and striving to be better, to improve themselves, to reject the negative influences and temptations of this life, and to purify themselves and to live a clean and happy life, to love people, to love their neighbors, to help the poor and the downtrodden in the society. That is really the comprehensive meaning of jihad. But obviously, when a thing is politicized, then there's no limit to how much it can be abused.
Okay, any last words for us?
Well, I would say that those of you who are interested in learning about Islam, or any religion, I would say, the best thing is to...
Go to Fox News?
No. Don't go to Breitbart.com, don't go to Fox News, because as you see, the media thrives in negative reporting. You will hardly hear anything positive about Islam and Muslims. Most of the news that you hear in the media about Islam and Muslims is negative. Bombing, suicide bombing, killing, and this, as if 1.8 billion Muslims of the world today are incapable of doing anything good. right? So, I mean, a thinking person already kind of factors this in, what is going on here. So I would say, if reach out to a Muslim. If you want to know about Islam, and reach out to a Muslim and see what their lives are all about. The terrorists, for example, this is a fringe minority, very tiny minority among Muslims, and their actions are blown out of proportion in the media. And every religion, Christianity is not an exception, Judaism is not an exception, Hinduism is not. Every religion has its own extremists. It's that fringe minority who, the militia violence, the white supremacist violence in the United States. I mean, if you do some research, you will find that they have killed far more people than Muslim terrorists have killed. But obviously their actions are not connected with the religion. But whenever a Muslim commits an act of terror, then immediately his religion is somehow connected with his action, which is not the right thing to do. I mean, people of all religions are committing heinous acts, but one has to be fair in describing the actions of the Muslims also, because a Muslim should have the right to go crazy just like anybody else. This guy who killed 20 children in Sandy Hook a few years ago, 7, 8-year-old children, 20 of them were mowed down, and nobody blamed Christianity for that. So why blame a Muslim for their heinous act? Because as a matter of fact, most scholars of Islam, some of the biggest names in the world, they have condemned ISIS, they have condemned terrorism, that this has nothing to do with Islam. You have hijacked our religion, right? But those condemnations are not reported in the media, and they say, well, you're not criticizing terrorists enough. I said, well, you have not been reading, you have not been reporting what is happening, right? That's a very good question. So sometimes I hear some Christians saying that Muhammad, peace be upon him, he wrote the book, the Quran, right? The word Quran means recitation. So the first time the Quran came down, it was not in the written form. It did not come in the form of a book. So Prophet Muhammad, before he became the prophet, he used to meditate in a cave, trying to find out who is God, who created me, why am I here? So he's delving into these complex questions about his existence. Suddenly, the stillness of the night is shattered by Archangel Gabriel bursting into that cave. And he took him in his embrace and he said, Iqra bismi rabbika alladhi khalaq. This is in Arab. Read in the name of your Lord who created you. And that's the first verse of the Quran that came down. And after that, over 23 years, the Quran, bit by bit, came in. Now, the whole book did not come down. Verses upon verses, chapter upon chapter came down gradually. And then, when the verses were revealed to the Prophet Muhammad, he would dictate those verses to his scribes who will write them down. Okay? And some of them will memorize them. So the Quran's preservation began from the very moment it started to come down, in two forms, in writing and by memorization. So by the time the final verses of the Quran were revealed, the whole Quran has been recorded. There were no paper in Arabia at that time, so they used to write on the shoulder blades of animals, skins, animal skins, barks of trees, stones, all of those things. But it was preserved, and after some time, when the paper became available, then all of those collections were transferred onto the papers, and copies were made and distributed across Muslim lands. So that's how the Quran came to be preserved.
Okay, I just like sitting there, I see like three kind of dressings. So
Okay.
I'm like curious, is there a difference like with in Islam? What does it
Is there a difference?
yeah, she's
so-
dressed differently. Are there different types of Islam or
Kind of how Ekram was talking about how like the Quran changed over time, right? As in there were new verses that were as in from the Bible. There are a lot of similarities between the Bible and the Quran, but then there are other verses in the Quran that were revealed, like such as women covering and things like that. So from my understanding, what I think of it as like it depends on how close of a relationship that you want with God. And for me, the reason why I cover fully is because I think of not just women in Islam, but women in general. I think of them as these very valuable jewels, right? I think women's bodies are very special. So I guess you could think, an example would be something like, let's say you go to a jewelry shop, right? And you see all of like the cheap jewelry hanging. I guess it's something that you can usually go in and try on and no one will really say anything. But if you want to get to something valuable, like a diamond or a pearl, it's usually in a little hidden case under the glassware, right? So I think that's one of my reasons, or why I kind of wanted to start covering, is when I learned more about the importance of a woman's body, that made me want to value myself more. So I think that's one of the reasons. But of course, I mean, I have so many friends. I don't really have many friends that cover, but I respect all their beliefs, and it's not too much of a, there's not much of a difference, but I think of it as that. I think that all women are very valuable, and that's one of the reasons why I cover myself.
And then going back to your question about the different followings, it comes down to how she was talking about your interpretation.
Mm-hmm.
So even though we do kind of, I guess, show ourselves a little bit differently,
Mm-hmm.
it's all following the same Islam, the same religion. So
Yeah.
it's not really a difference in regards to beliefs and so
Yeah.
on and so forth.
Pressure? Is there any pressure to wear hijab, niqab any certain way, or where is it coming from? Is it,
You want to answer that, or should I?
Like,
there's this myth of oppression. Women are oppressed.
Oh
They have
yeah,
to
all the
cover.
time. I feel like when people look at you, they're just like they probably think of you as this. Oh, this girl is probably oppressed at home, or she's forced to wear this. But I mean, honestly, besides religion, like according to family and my parents, if I were to take this off right now, no one would be able to say anything, because I remember when I wanted to first start wearing it. Well, my mom was an inspiration, of course, but she wasn't too sure whether I should start or not, even though she was doing it herself. She knew that, I would have to deal with criticism and I would be looked at differently. But like I said, when I learned the importance, of it, that made me want to do it. So, yeah, no pressure at all. It's definitely a choice, something I love to do.
Are you aware of what it looks from people?
Yes, but I don't think that really makes a difference to me. I mean, especially because I think Richland is such a diverse college. But besides that, I think if you're confident in what you're doing, it shouldn't really matter. And I've never really had to deal with anything too crazy. No one has really ever said anything to me or made any comments or anything like that. I feel like everyone's usually very supportive, especially here at Richland. Everyone's like, oh, you should keep doing it. So it's always a boost. Never makes me want to take it off, definitely.
Do any of you up there experience any daily microaggressions or discrimination?
no, I mean, I never personally had like somebody come up to me and like say stuff. I could see looks sometimes, like especially from older people, but in general, everybody's nice.
Do you feel pressure either way from other peers to either to cover or not to cover? Because there's going to be pressure either way, right?
I mean, when I was younger, like I was about maybe 7 or 8, I wanted to wear a hijab, and my mom didn't let me. She's like, if you wear it now, you're going to take it off when you get older. And so when it came time for me to wear it, I didn't want to wear it anymore. And so then my parents started telling me why I should. And then eventually I came personally to, I wanted to wear it. Nobody forced me to wear it. and I've worn it since I was 13, and I've loved it.
So Amina, do you get pressure to wear it from your peers, or?
I wouldn't say not necessarily. I think, again, it comes with the community and the area you've grown up in, because I feel, I mean, in my family personally, I do have one of my cousins, her entire family does wear hijab and all of that, but there's no, I think, pressure, because for them, I think it just comes down to your relationship personally on like a theological basis. And so, excuse me. So I feel like I personally haven't felt any sort of pressure in that, just because I feel how I've grown up, everybody kind of respects, you know, one another and like your level of beliefs. So there's never any like shaming for not wearing one.
Cultural? Is it like, do different countries have different levels of, say, conformity or?
I think one of the biggest misconceptions is that people confuse religion with culture a lot.
Yeah.
And I think that's very different. Like in Pakistan, for example, yeah, there are modest dress codes, but at the same time, like covering my face, that's not done culturally. That's something I'm doing by following my religion. So that's one of the differences. But yeah, not that I can really. I think it's in most like Middle Eastern or Asian countries, South Asian countries, where you just don't show too much skin, dress modestly, or I guess I would say.
So how do you guys date?
How do we date? Huh.
We don't.
What's the
How do we get married? Is that what you mean?
how does matchmaking happen?
Well, for my family, well, I guess I should say when my parents were younger, for them, what my mom's parents, what they did was basically your parents can, Islamically, your parents can suggest you someone, as in they can tell you about someone like, oh, you should probably meet him, nice guy, get to know him, but they'll never pressure you into it. I guess it also depends on, like I said, religion and culture are two different things. So, according to religion, it's all up to the girl's decision and the guy's decision. There's no, there's no forcing or any of that, and I think that's what a lot of people think goes on, such as, oppression and all that. But I think it also depends on how strict the family is. Some families are very strict where some, they don't really give you the choice. And well, some, such as my parents, they're very open about this. They're like, oh, if you ever like anyone, you can let us know. So they're very open about it. But I think it just depends on how, I guess, how your parents were raised and how they got married, and then that kind of just goes on.
You two have.
No, I mean, I think along the same lines for sure. I think there's a lot of cultural influence in terms of how you get married, because there is the religious basis, but then on that it builds on how did your parents meet? How, is that assumed? Because I know, because I'm from Pakistan, so I know there it's not unlikely for elders to kind of be like, well, we know this family, maybe you should meet him and this and so forth. But just like you were saying, it comes down to your decision.
Older the generation, I feel like the more stricter they are. Yeah, exactly. So I feel like it was still a little somewhat cool when my parents got married, and then now they're completely okay with it. They're not like, okay, well, there are no rules, I guess I would say.
Do you have peers that secretly date?
Peers that secretly date? No, not that I can think of. Well, I know there are some Muslims, but just like Ekram was saying, that there are going to be certain people from certain religions that do things, against their religion, or
Another question of the level of religiosity or conformity. I mean, it's with Christians, there's from 0 to 100%.
Yeah. I would say it's the same for all religions. What do you?
What was your question in terms of conformity?
The religiosity or level of conformity to the religion.
Yeah. Okay.
Meaning how much people practice?
Yeah.
I mean, I guess some practice very little, and some practice are very religious people.
I think that's a commonality, I would say, at least in terms of all religions. I think it just depends on the individual, maybe how you were raised, your sort of familiarity with the religion.
Is the dating just between Muslims, or you're free to date non-Muslims?
Okay, for girls, you have to marry a Muslim. For boys, they could marry a Christian or Jewish, but that's it. Like, you have to marry a Muslim.
All these are Islamic faiths, Islam, Judaism, and Christianity. They all have the same religion, so it's it's okay for the man to marry into one of those, because generally that household will maintain
Right.
its
Right, definitely.
Islamic beliefs.
Yeah.
It's so that like in Islam we believe the religion of the children goes to the whatever the dad is, and so a woman can't, like a Muslim woman can't marry a Christian because the kids are going to be Christian. It's so that you could keep the linkage of being a Muslim.
Okay, so I guess one of the myths out there is maybe Muslims are not like American. Do you think you identify as American like any other American?
I think so.
Yeah.
I would say so. I think that's weird. I haven't heard that. But I don't know. I feel like American's it's a cultural description. So I don't know. I feel like I'm probably more affiliated with the American culture than I am from the traditional like Pakistani culture. And so I don't know. I would say I'm American. Again, a cultural thing. I think.
I would say the same. I think it depends on how you define American. I mean, I'm not going to say I'm the most Americanized person, but of course, comparing that to being a Pakistani, besides being a Muslim and covering, of course, comparing both of those cultures, I think I would say I'm more Americanized than Pakistani, as in things I do in my daily life, from morning to night, I would say. Because I think it's because we live here, so that's why we just tend to follow, because we're around our friends and we're around these people. But yeah, I guess it would have been a little different if we were living in Pakistan.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to know, like, the hijab, niqab, what's the difference?
Oh, this is a niqab, the face veil, and then a hijab is the head covering. Yeah.
I'm wearing a hijab, and that's
I'm
a
wearing a
niqab.
niqab, yeah. And I think a burqa is usually known as the entire thing, right?
Yeah,
at least for
burqa
some.
is like when your eyes are covered too.
Oh, I think it's probably different in other countries, probably, yeah.
How to?
Because sometimes we refer to just the bottom piece as a burqa,
Okay.
and then some refer to the entire thing as a burqa, so I think it's like different everywhere around.
Yeah, I've heard like.
But you're also wearing an abaya?
Yes, abaya.
You kind of look
The dress.
the wrong
Yeah.
dress. So the niqab is kind of a separate material that you...
Right, it is a separate material, but in this case, mine is actually joined to my hijab.
Mm.
It's attached, sewn together.